And the temple of God was open in heaven, and there was seen in the temple the ark of his testament. And there were lightnings, and voices, and thunderings, and an earthquake, and great hail. Now, before we go into that, I want to say this. Each week when we come for Revelations, y'all read a chapter ahead of me. Stay ahead of me. Then you might want to throw in some rebuttal or something. Don't nobody know everything. Now, this chapter began with a temple. And the temple of God was open in heaven. It began with a temple. This chapter began with a temple. Now, on earth, 11:1. I want you to look at 11:1 first. And there was given me a reed like unto a rod, and the angel stood, saying, Rise and measure the temple of God and the altar, and them that worship therein. Okay. That temple was on earth. 11:1. That temple was on earth. There was given me a reed like unto a rod, and the angel stood, saying, Arise, measure the temple of God and the altar, and them that worship therein. That temple was on earth. This temple in Revelations 11:19 is in heaven. And the temple of God was open in heaven. See that? Mm-hmm. And there was seen in his temple the ark of his covenant, and there were thunderings, there were lightnings and voices and thunderings and earthquake and a great hail. Now the focus is on the ark of the covenant. That's the focus right there, or the ark of his testament. The focus is on that. That's the symbol of God's presence with his people. The ark of the testament, or the ark of the covenant. It's a symbol of God's presence with his people. And the vision of the ark would greatly encourage God's suffering folks, if they see that. Now, these are people to whom John sent this book. Now, once again, John heard a storm coming. Greater judgment is about to fall on the rebellious people of the earth. Now, notice things happen before the storm warnings. I want to show you something. Things happen before the storm. Revelations 4:5. Things happen before the storm. And out of the throne proceed lightnings and thunderings and voices, and there were 7 lamps of fire burning before the throne, which are the 7 spirits of God. Okay, now look at 8:5. Revelations 8:5. And the angel took the censer and filled it with fire of the altar and cast it into the earth. And there were voices and thunderings and lightnings and an earthquake. Revelation 11:19. And the temple of God was open in heaven, and there was seen in the temple the ark of his testament, and there were lightnings and voices and thunderings and an earthquake and great hail. See, these are storm warnings. These are storm warnings. Something about to happen here. Let's move on. Revelations 12:1. And there appeared a great wonder in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, and the moon under her feet, and upon her head a crown of 12 stars. Now there's 2 wonders in this chapter. There's 2 wonders. Verse 3, I'm going to read, but we're going to go back here. But look at verse 3. And there appeared another wonder. See that? And behold, a great red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns and 7 crowns upon his heads. Now, wonder means something strange, causing a person to look at and marvel. That's what wonder means. Something strange that causes you to look and marvel. You know, you see some women, they'll do it like this. Mm-hmm. And the young folks say, OMG. Something I learned from the young folks. So that's what a wonder is. Now, chapter 12 of Revelation, verse 1, is a reference to the nation of Israel. There appeared a wonder in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, and the moon under her feet, and upon her head a head and a crown of 12 stars. See, clothed with the sun, that speaks of the nation of Israel. And, the sun speaks of Israel's glory. The sun is the greater light, and the moon is the lesser light. And I want to point out, this is the fulfillment of Joseph's dream. All the way back to Genesis 37 and verse 9. This is the fulfillment of Joseph's dream. Genesis 37 verse 9. I'm going to read verse 8 first. And his brethren said to him, Shall thou indeed reign over us, or shall thou indeed have dominion over us? And they hated him yet the more for his dreams and for his words. Now these are his brothers. And he dreamed yet another dream, and told it his brethren, and said, Behold, I have dreamed a dream more. And behold, the sun and the moon and the 11 stars made obeisance to me. Now the 11 stars represents the sons of Israel. Joseph was the 12th. Joseph had 12 sons. He said, the 11 stars made obeisance unto me. Now watch verse 10. And he told it to his father and to his brother. And his father rebuked him and said unto him, What is this dream that thou hast dreamed? Shall I and thy mother and thy brethren indeed come to bow down ourselves to thee to the earth? Well, they did do it. But I'm just pointing out that these 11 stars represents Israel's 11th son, and Joseph was the 12th. Let's go back to Revelation. So I'm pointing out Revelation 12:1 is really pointing to the nation of Israel. Verse 2 says, And she, that's the woman. I'm going to read them 2 verses again. And there appeared a great wonder in heaven, verse 1. A woman clothed with the sun and the moon under her feet, and upon her head a crown of 12 stars. And she, being with child, travailing in birth, pained to be delivered. Now this child represents Christ, because he came from the nation of Israel. This child represents him. Look at Galatians chapter 4, verse 4 and 5. Galatians 4, 4 and 5. But when the fullness of time was come, God sent forth his Son, made of a woman, made under the law, to redeem them that were under the law, that we, he's talking about Jews, that we might receive the adoption of sons. See, Paul wrote the book of Galatians, and when he said we, he's talking about us Jews, might receive the adoption of sons. But Christ was made, he was a virgin born, and this verse points it out. But when the fullness of time was come, God sent forth his Son, made of a woman, made under the law. Made under the law. See, this is why rape was a real bad crime in Israel. It was a real bad crime. It carried the death penalty. And the reason why I say that, because all the women of Israel knew that the virgin child was coming, knew that the child was going to be virgin born, and they were hoping it could have been them that bring forth the Messiah. But once you're raped, it's all over. So that's where I was born. They knew he was coming. Isaiah 7:14 says this, Behold, the virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and shall call his name Emmanuel. Isaiah 7:14. I'm going to look at it to make sure I'm giving you the right verse. Isaiah 7:14. Therefore the Lord himself shall give you a sign. Behold, a virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and shall call his name Emmanuel. Emmanuel means God with us. Now see, all the virgins in Israel was hoping they were the woman. But if she got raped, that disqualified her. That disqualified her. Okay, Revelations 12:3. And there appeared another wonder in heaven. And behold, a great red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and 7 crowns upon his heads. Now the color red is associated with death, or blood, which is associated with death. Revelation 6:4. I want to point that out. Color red is associated with death. Revelation chapter 6 and verse 4. And there went out another horse that was red, and power was given to him that sat thereon to take peace from the earth, and that they should kill one another. And there was given unto him a great sword. So red is associated with death. Now the heads, these heads represent mountains. Like you've heard, most people know about Rome sits up on 7 mountains or 10 mountains or something like that. So the horns represent mountains, the heads represent mountains, and the horns represent kings. The heads represent mountains, and the horns represent kings. So these mountains will sort of be like, kingdoms. And these horns, like I said, represent kings. We'll study the symbolic meaning of these symbols just a little later because we're going to go further into it. 12:4. And his tail drew the 3rd part of the stars of heaven, and did cast them to the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman, which was ready to be delivered, and to devour her child as soon as it was born. Now verse 4 is a reference to the fall of Satan when he revolted against God. He revolted against God. Isaiah 14:12-15. Isaiah 14:12-15. How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? How art thou cut down to the ground, which didst weaken the nations? For thou sayest in thine heart, and he's talking to himself now, thou sayest in thine heart, I will ascend into heaven, I will exalt my throne above the stars of God, I will sit upon the mount of the congregation in the sides of the north, I will ascend above the heights of the clouds, I will be like the Most High. You see that? I'll be like the Most High. I'm going to read verse 15. He said, yet thou shalt be brought down to hell, to the sides of the pit. Now, in order to find out how Satan operates, we have to study the Bible. See, that's the first sin. Satan said, I will be like God. That's the first sin. That first sin is idolatry. See, but the casting out haven't happened yet. It haven't happened yet. See, he still has access to God's throne, but he can't get flow around in heaven like he used to. Even Christ said, I saw Satan as lightning fall from heaven. But he still got access. We're gonna see that. Revelation 12:4 says, he was ready. The woman was ready to be delivered. Let me read the whole verse. And his tail drew the 3rd part of the stars of heaven, and did cast them to the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman which was ready to be delivered, for to devour her child as soon as it was born. I want to emphasize these stars. These stars, they said to be fallen angels or demons that he took with him. So he got demons. He took them with him. But he was ready to devour their child. See, this is Satan's attempt to destroy Christ. See, there was always a dragon standing by waiting to destroy Israel. or the ancestors of Christ. There was always a dragon. Why do you say that? Pharaoh was called a dragon. Ezekiel 29:3. Ezekiel 29:3. Ezekiel 29:3. Verse 2 says, Son of man, set thy face against Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and prophesy against him and against all Egypt. Speak and said, Thus saith the Lord God, Behold, I am against thee, Pharaoh, king of Egypt, the great dragon that lieth in the midst of his rivers, which hath said, My river is my own, and I have made it for myself. So Pharaoh is referred to as a dragon. And so is Nebuchadnezzar. Let's turn back and look at Jeremiah chapter 51 and verse 34. Right back in your left hand. 51:34. Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, hath devoured me. He hath crushed me. He hath made me an empty vessel. He hath swallowed me up like a dragon. He hath filled his belly with my delicacies. He hath cast me out. That's Jerusalem crying out. So see, all these dragons, whether you know it or not, see, this dragon was standing here with Satan, ready to get rid of Christ. Now I want to point out, Satan hates babies. Satan hates babies. All the way back from Egypt, he said, throw all the men and children in the river to the alligators. That's what Pharaoh said. Throw the men and children in the river and then save the women and children. Trying to get rid of them. All through Israel's history, they have these old gods, Molech, with the hot arms and fire in his lap, and people walk up and lay the babies on the arm, human sacrifice. They had him. They had Herod. Herod was killing all the babies. And now we got Planned Parenthood. Satan hates babies. Amen. Okay, look at verse 5. This is the woman, Israel. And she brought forth a man-child, who was to rule all nations with a rod of iron. And her child was caught up unto God to his throne. Now there was a lot of things happening before this. See, there's a huge time frame in this verse. A big one. See, we must recognize Christ spent 33 years on earth before he was crucified. 33 years. According to Acts 1:3 says he was seen of the apostles 40 days. Acts 1:3. Acts 1:3. To whom also he showed himself alive after his passion by many infallible proofs, being seen of them 40 days, and speaking of the things pertaining to the kingdom of God. Now this was after his crucifixion. Now since the rapture, right here, since the rapture has already taken place, and we're in the tribulation period, there's a huge bit of time in this verse when he rules with a rod of iron. Now, when he rules with a rod of iron is in the millennium. We haven't got to the millennium yet. We haven't got there yet. Rod of iron doesn't mean he'll be a tyrant. It means his will would be supreme and no politics involved. Christ says it, that's it. Ain't no thought involved in it. Verse 6. And the woman fled into the wilderness, where she had the place prepared of God, that they should feed her there 1,260 days. I want you to notice that real close, those words right there. 1,260 days. Now jump back and look at verse 2 of chapter 11. Verse 2 of chapter 11. And the court which is without the temple leave out, and measure it not, for it is given unto the Gentiles. And the holy city shall they tread under foot 42 months, 1,260 days. 1,260 days. That's basically the duration of the tribulation. We're in the tribulation period here. Okay, now let's move on here. We look at verse 6. Now since the dragon couldn't get Christ, in verse 6, and the woman fled into the wilderness, where she had the place prepared of God, that they should feed her 1,260 days. Now since the dragon couldn't get Christ, he'll turn his attention on Israel.
Mm-hmm.
He'll turn his attention on Israel. That's why the woman fled, that they should feed her 1,260 days. See, personally, I believe the they in verse 6 is the Gentiles. Where let me read. And the woman fled into the wilderness, where she had the place prepared of God, that they should feed her. I believe that they is some Gentiles. Now, why do you say that? Matthew 25, 31 through 46. Matthew 25. (31 through 46), a lot of verses. I'm just going to read some of them. I'm not going to read them all. Verse 31. When the Son of Man shall come in his glory, and all the holy angels with him, then shall he sit on the throne of his glory. And before him shall be gathered all nations, and he shall separate them one from another, as a shepherd divideth his sheep from the goats. And he shall set the sheep on his right hand, and the goats on his left. Then shall the king say unto them on his right hand, Come, ye blessed of my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. I'm going to read them all. For I was hungry, and ye gave me meat. I was thirsty, and ye gave me drink. I was a stranger, and ye took me in. Naked, and ye clothed me. I was sick, and ye visited me. I was in prison, and ye came unto me. Then shall the righteous answer him, saying, Lord, when saw we thee hungry, and fed thee, or thirsty, and gave thee drink? When saw we thee a stranger, and took thee in, or naked, and clothed thee? Or when saw we thee sick, or in prison, and came unto thee? And the king shall answer and say unto them, Verily I say unto you, inasmuch as ye have done it unto one of the least of these my brethren, ye have done it unto me. Then shall ye say unto them on the left hand, Depart from me, ye cursed, into the everlasting fire, prepared for the devil and his angels. For I was hungry, and ye gave me no meat. I was thirsty, and ye gave me no drink. I was a stranger, and ye took me not in. Naked, and ye clothed me not. Sick, and in prison, and ye visited me not. Then shall they also answer him, saying, Lord, when saw we thee hungry, or thirsty, or a stranger, or naked, or sick, or in prison, and did not minister unto thee? Then shall he answer them, saying, Verily I say unto you, inasmuch as ye did it not to one of the least of these, you did it not to me. And these shall go away into everlasting punishment, and the righteous into life eternal. So see, that's why I said that they, in Revelations 12:6, that they should feed her there 1,260 days, that they are Gentile nations. Some took Israel in, some didn't.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of like what happened in Germany. Some people took those Israelis in while Hitler was trying to eradicate them. So see, Christ refers to these nations as sheep nations and goat nations. Okay, Revelation 12:7. We're going to stop after this one. And there was war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon fought and his angels. War in heaven. Now, Jude 9 records contention between Michael and the devil. Jude 9 records contention. Now watch it. Jude 9. Yet Michael, verse 8 says, likewise also these filthy dreamers defile the flesh, despise dominion, and speak evil of dignities. Yet Michael the archangel, when contending with the devil, he disputed about the body of Moses, durst not bring against him a railing accusation, but said, the Lord rebuke thee. Now, Jude 9 records contention between Michael and the devil. Revelation records war. See, it wasn't time for Michael to fight then. History tells us that Michael either was on his way to bury Moses or was coming back from him. And Satan wanted their body. Now, Revelation chapter 12 and verse 7 records war. Most of the time when we read this verse, our minds tell us that this has already happened, but it hasn't happened. The church hasn't been raptured, and this verse is still future. There's war in heaven. We're going to stop right there, but I just want to point out that if there's going to be war in heaven, we will forget peace on earth.